Level 1. Robot Cell Helper. At 20, you earn $2,800 a month on night shift beside a greasy yellow teach pendant. You hang the red lockout tag before you enter the robot cage. A senior tech points at crooked boxes while a frozen palletizer holds the conveyor in silence. You sweep metal shavings from the robot cell with a push broom. Near the cage post, you tape the split toe on your worn steel toe boot. You help the senior tech hunt blown fuses with a dented flashlight. From the greasy parts bin, you dig out spare proximity sensors. You wipe black grease from the coiled pendant cable. At the bracket, you swap the photo eye without shifting its aim. You face operators demanding a restart near the call button. With stained shop rags, you pack the leak around the air manifold. You reset the safety gate latch after the alarm clears. A single bad latch shows you that one stopped robot can choke a whole line. You eat vending dinner from a plastic tray by the maintenance cage. Under the cabinet light, you test fuses with a cracked probe multimeter. You coil the blue air hose below the cable tray. The line lead points at the production chart and pins the lost time on you. You trace the frayed sensor wire through grease and grime. At the open safety door, you accept blame for lost production hours. You hold grease-black gloves against your thighs and freeze. Across 3 silent lanes, operators stack pallets behind the stopped conveyor. You absorb the senior tech's accusation near the bent post. On the break room wall clock, you count the lost hours. You study the latch interlock switch and understand the failure chain. Instead of hiding, you walk back toward the yellow robot base. You grip the beat-up tool bag, knowing hands earn least. Level 2. Field Service Technician. At 23, your dispatcher hands you the company service van, and your pay reaches $5,500 a month. You clip the temporary customer badge onto your service vest. Beside the dock plate, you unload the torque tool case. You find mobile robots dead in refrigerated aisles while workers and forklifts wait. On the controller, you read fault codes from the red indicator. You open manuals for the unfamiliar robot at the hard case. Over the radio, you refuse the manager demanding an unsafe restart. You work beneath the packaging guardrail at midnight. Before travel calls, you pack the personal PPE kit in order. You swap the spare encoder cable at the servo drive. With fogged safety glasses, you clear condensation before checking alignment. You drive past roadside hotel signs near industrial parks. Emergency calls pay more because plant managers turn downtime into billing power. You defend root cause against production pressure at the cold room clipboard. At the unfamiliar cabinet, you plug in the pendant adapter. You teach operators the safe restart sequence on the training mat. Forklift drivers stack loads behind the frozen aisle and wait for movement. You hear the gripper crash again during peak production. Across the line, a customer screams at you through a cracked face shield. You snap the dented cabinet door shut too hard. Under alarm strobes, you recheck the servo drive module. You clear warehouse ice from your grip on the frosted wrench handle. At the green button, you restart the line after proving the fault. You sleep in a hotel room with the travel keycard on the nightstand. On the loading dock curb at sunrise, you laugh with a bitter throat. You pocket the folded work order after you see billing power. Level 3. Robot Specialist. By 27, you earn $9,000 a month, and managers watch you enter the silent weld cell. You step over arc-scarred concrete inside the fenced cell. At the gate, you clip on the flame-resistant jacket. You back up the robot program before commanding any access. Near the fixture, you interview operators about the crash sequence. You set the thermal camera beside the cabinet. Under his hard hat, the manager urges a restart, and you stop him. You trace intermittent encoder faults along the moving harness. Beside cheaper tools, you open the high-end multimeter. You reteach the robot path around the weld fixture pin. At the paint booth rail, you mark overspray scars for repair. You check gearbox backlash with the dial indicator. Weekend silence surrounds dozens of frozen robot arms while you move cell to cell. You challenge the vendor, blaming plant maintenance near the sample gripper. Over plant radios, supervisors call your name. You walk pharmaceutical packaging rooms in shoe covers. Rare troubleshooting pays because restored motion saves production contracts. You lay precision alignment tools on the clean foam. At the red restart placard, you declare production unsafe until you verify clearance. You answer the weekend call beside a cold coffee cup. On the cracked phone screen, you watch the holiday text wait. You feel burnout as the vibrating phone starts again. Against the wire cell fence, you press both palms flat. You clear the production restart after proving clearance with the gauge. Technicians energize the weld tips and bring the cell back in sequence around you. You leave with the robot software laptop, knowing skill commands premiums. Level 4. One truck robot contractor. At 31, not long past burnout, you clear $22,000 a month under a fresh company sign. You lift salvaged servos onto homemade steel shelves. Beside labeled sensor bins, you load the grease cartridge crate. You map customer sites by failure type and driving distance. At the flour-dusted palletizer, you quote the bakery supervisor before restart. You keep the whole service ticket because factories buy uptime directly. Near hot rollers, you swap the torn timing belt. You listen for wrist-bearing chatter with the mechanic's stethoscope. Into the glove box, you slide the insurance certificate sleeve. You aim the truck toward the molding plant after midnight. By resin barrels, you argue deposit timing with the plastic plant foreman. You change harmonic drive grease under the suspended robot arm. With the magnetic base indicator, you calibrate joint backlash. You sort safety relays by voltage before dawn. From the cab-mounted radio, you answer the warehouse sorter call. You choose the sorter over the packaging manager's missed call log. 3 crippled plants glow across the industrial skyline before sunrise. You watch the replacement drive smoke during warranty restart. Outside the bay, you kick the muddy rear tire. You tell the plant supervisor with the lanyard that the replacement comes free. At the empty drive cubby, you drain inventory to save trust. You bypass the nuisance fault without defeating guarding. From the service truck, you power the rugged tablet mount. You restock belts from the shrink-wrapped salvage auction pallet. Alone by the chute, you laugh when the sorter cycles. You paint "Uptime Sold Here" across the wet bay wall. Level 5. Service crew owner. At 36, you clear $65,000 a month as Sunrise sends branded vans out of your shop. You hand out embroidered uniforms beside the parts cage. Before the first shift siren, technicians load reducer crates. You teach juniors to feel joint drag on the cutaway wrist. Contracts pay before robots break, and your calendar becomes protection customers fund in advance. You stage orange lockout kits for plants before dawn calls. With a food plant buyer and a hairnet badge, you negotiate response windows. You label robot joints by failure history at the joint rack. Between stacked spare drives, you maneuver the shop forklift. You check divided van drawers before crews roll out. At the training bench, you rebuild a pendant trigger spring. You face the supervisor angry about a rejected inspection part. At sunrise, drivers split toward bakeries, warehouses, and molding floors. You turn stocked reducers into markup before downtime begins. From blue drums, you pour robot oil into service jugs. You watch technicians fill the floor from behind shop glass. Before the crews, your best technician challenges the overtime rules. You slam the rattling parts cage gate after the argument. The best technician quits and drops his company jacket on the bench. You visit both customer lobbies before the ex-tech calls. With the measured grease syringe, you steady shaken apprentices. You rotate crews so accounts trust the company, not one face. Each technician mistake now carries your stitched company patch. You walk onto the painted shop aisle instead of hiding upstairs. While phones ring across the shop, the used training robot cycles. You bolt a blank quality board beside the loading door. Level 6, Regional Uptime Contractor. At 43, you face parked AMR rows while operations directors wait, and $180,000 a month depends on your plan. You roll into the regional depot with crane service trucks. In the dark fulfillment center, conveyor alarms echo through the overhead maze. You stage critical spares near the largest customer zones. Dispatchers route crews across state lines on the wall-sized map. You face the operations director demanding restart before morning pick. At the battery cabinet, technicians load lithium packs for crews. You open the branded training lab for customer teams. Service drivers cross river bridges toward distant plants. You test update rollback on the quarantine AMR pad. At the shutdown notice board, you argue priority with a plant manager. You send the senior tech through airport security with the tool case. Parts warehousing turns scarcity into billable protection for customers. You lift a pallet of drives onto the mezzanine gate.
At training, you teach customers to stop repeating fault resets on pendants. You hear the vendor blame customer configuration over the conference speaker. Rows of stalled AMRs blink beneath the warehouse skylight grid. You see the firmware package brick half the fleet during peak volume. With a raised orange baton, you point crews outward. You divert the senior technician mid-route using the boarding pass. At the command table, you promise uptime, not excuses. You build a manual recovery lane around disabled robots. Guaranteed uptime needs people and parts placed near failure zones. You use supplier credit to fill racks before invoices clear. Technicians restart aisles and AMRs peel away in waves. You pin the multi-site uptime guarantee above the dispatch room. Level 7. Certified Robotics Maintenance Network. At 52, you clear $750,000 a month each cycle beside the glassed pendant. You unveil OEM plaques on the brushed Academy authorization wall. On the dispatch floor, you walk between ringing plant calls. You watch the master trainer demonstrate safe recovery through the transparent shield. Factories fund uptime agreements because prevented downtime protects production schedules. You answer the OEM auditor questioning a regional lead's calibration procedure. Apprentices rotate through fault stations in branded shirts. You stand before service trucks lined under the illuminated depot awning. A senior tech teaches backlash checks on the clear gearbox housing. You meet the executive demanding weekend coverage across states. Parts margin grows when depots stock likely failures before breakdowns. You watch regional leads receive assignments beside charging service vans. Over the depot yard, a licensed drone surveys crews leaving for factories. You watch graduation pins turn helpers into certified technicians. At the training cell, you reach for the insulated driver, then stop. You step back at the yellow floor stripe with your jaw clenched. The regional trainer insists that an apprentice can finish alone. You exhale toward executives without entering the cage. Using the company method, the apprentice clears the fault. You host manufacturers inside the private demo theater along the curved rail. Dispatchers launch night crews before production alarms spread. You back the parts director requiring certification proof for rush orders. Across robot cells, trainees mirror recovery motions. You set apprenticeship badges in velvet trays for young shop floor helpers. At the depot map, you hand-engraved key rings to regional leads.